Hello, everybody, and good morning, good evening, and have a pleasant day. It is Tuesday, and you're in the right spot at your screen. Here you have the one and only Liz Miller together with us, and we are going for a smashing hit topic such as how to do CX in times of market contraction, or to place it, what the shit is happening if we are in a downturn time, and how we manage to survive without gasoline going for a long. Or another famous picture I like to use as an elaboration: go through the Death Valley with just a little amount of water. Liz, we are so grateful that you're with us. Happy New Year to everybody which is joining in, and I'm very grateful that we have you, your vivid expertise, and your just natural Liz with us. And I'm very happy and looking forward.
I'm here to hear you curse again. I'm not going to lie. And I'm sure everyone on the live stream is agreeing with me. We're starting off the new year. We're starting 2023 realizing that Ralph has a potty mouth. Is that just me? Like, am I the first one to have realized? Like, am I the only one that didn't know that Ralph just said the S word on you?
Yeah, I think you're late to the party, Liz. He's
Sven
I think
he's
we
a dirty
are
ball.
Sven
already,
understood.
we have already reached the conclusion. Hi, Sven.
Yeah,
you jumped the gun, Sven.
Yeah, the episode's over. Sven ruined it for everyone. Great. And Ralph has a body mouth. We're done.
Hey, early lunch.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
We
it's lovely
love
to see
you,
all
Ralph.
three of you.
And we love Liz even more.
I love Ralph's potty mouth. Are you kidding? That was like the highlight of my year so far. That was awesome. That's great. I want to hear some more, Phil.
The aspect is that we are grateful that we have Liz with us today, as she is an mostly very political correct talker, but she is also an honest girl. Such as
The live starting early.
I try to avoid the bad words like the S or the F, but I'm in the, let's put it that I read a lot, and the concern that things in 2023 might go a bit different, and in the way of that people told us, just wait for the next business year. We will contract a lot of business with you. And
so much better.
Suddenly the next call, I'm afraid there is no money. Yeah. And I'm very curious what your feedback came from several areas. And for those people which I believe are not joining us by accident, can you explain a bit who you are, what you do normally for a living, and that you most times own your own calendar?
Yeah, I love it. So yes, Liz Miller, VP and Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, which is a super highfalutin title for, I think it's paid professional loudmouth. Is that like, I've learned from you three of like what I do for a living. And if I've had the three of you as my guides into how to be an analyst, I'm fairly certain curmudgeon was already taken by some of my colleagues. So I just went with professional loudmouth. But what I cover in the world of Constellation, and it's my great privilege to have been given the leeway to kind of cover a very broad space that is commonly known as customer experience. And for us at Constellation, customer experience is a strategy that is that enterprise-wide team sport about focusing on the needs and expectations of the customer, and then translating that into profitable, durable relationships that benefit the business. So for us, and certainly Ralph, I think you're spot on in what you're seeing. I think ever since the dumpster fire known as 2022 or 2020, let's go way back to the original dumpster fire. The first time someone lit the dumpster on fire.
Well, 2020 was about 36 months long.
stuff.
Yeah, like 2020, it was like the 10,000 days, or like, it was like December 31st, of 2020. Like, just, it was like the ultimate Groundhog's Day. We just kept kind of going back to it. But I think that the really weird thing that happened is we were kind of waiting. I think we've all been on this path of waiting for better. Yet there are two problems. We haven't defined what better is, and we're not really quite sure what we need to do to actually manifest better. Like, what does that look like? Like, for a lot of people, better looks like everyone around me isn't panicked and dying, and like, we're not trapped in our homes, and like, the walls crushing in. But for other people, better has really been waiting for the hamster wheel of artificial growth, especially in technology, to start to slow down. And what we have to remember is that 2020 was the start point of a very artificial time frame in business, right? Where, and we kind of celebrated it when it was happening, right? Like, can we all remember in 2021, even in 2022, when everyone's press releases started with the phrase, because of, our pandemic time compression, where 5 years of digital transformation happened in 6 weeks, or like whatever that number ratio was. We all celebrated that like it was this really amazing thing. Like, oh my God, this is so great, and it's great for humanity, and we got all this digital transformation stuff done. But we fundamentally forgot that digital transformation is not, in fact, a journey with a destination, right? There are lots of rest stops in between, but we're going to be constantly on the hamster wheel. And that hamster wheels have to slow. And if it's artificially fast, the hamster loses its footing and crashes to the bottom of the wheel. And I think that's kind of what we're feeling right now, right? Is that we've had this artificial spin, and we're like, revenues are up, let's go hire a bunch more people, because we took an old mental model of what happens when business takes off, and we applied old school thinking to it, right? When business takes off, you hire more people, you bring on more salespeople because then they can address the demand. You bring on more customer success people because now they can make the demand successful, and it continues to grow. And then there's going to be this period of upsell and cross-sell where we can then maintain that growth. And then we've got our next plateau of revenue. Problem is, we forgot that the reason why we had seen that explosive growth was an artificial wheel spin, right? So now we're kind of feeling the contraction of that as we head into 2023. And I tend to agree with a lot of the experts out there. And believe me, I am not a financial analyst. I barely think I'm a technology analyst. I mean, you guys can tell me. I barely hang on when people call me a technology analyst. I'm like, sure, let's go with that title. I am definitely not a financial analyst. But I do agree with a lot of the experts out there that say that there is a large part of the market that's talking ourselves into a recession, where we're like, the world's on fire. Oh my God, we're all going to die. There's a recession coming. It's coming. And then we talk ourselves into it. I think we're probably going to end up somewhere in the middle. But the reality is that no matter where we end up, that wheel is going to start to slow. People are going to start to hit that point. They've just bought all these technologies. They've bought all these systems. They're bringing it together. I bought the best suite. Oh my God, amazing. Now they're going to start to use it, right? Now they're going to start to see, hopefully, the fruits of their investment. And because of that, we're going to see a market contraction. And I think that the reality is that the customer experience fallacies that we executed across 2021 and 2022 that kind of got us through and still worked, but weren't necessarily true CX strategies. Like, we tooled our way through it. We didn't strategy our way through it. All of those bumps and bruises are going to come to light in 2023. And so we're going to see both like a budget contraction. We're going to see a market contraction. We're also going to start to see a lot of consolidation across things all four of us cover, right? We're going to start to see people be like, actually, I really didn't need 19 of those. Cool. I'm just going to go down to 1, right? Maybe 5. Like, let's be real. But I think I think that when it talks about what do we have to do with customer experience in this time of collapse and kind of restructuring and contraction, is we have to remember CX was never a tool. CX was always a strategy. And if we didn't have a strategy behind all the stuff we bought, is going to be exactly that stuff, right? So we're going to start to see, at least I hope, kind of this dawning of time where we're all like, oh, We need a strategy, and that comes first, and that gets the wheel started again at kind of a normal standard pace. So welcome to my TED Talk, everyone.
Well done. I mean, it's kind of hard to put the strategy first when you've already done the purchasing of the toys.
Yeah, but we've done it arguably through multiple phases of technology investment, right? I would say that the three of you, and having watched shows and knowing the three of you, would probably all agree and have agreed that the failings of CRM aren't necessarily the tool. It's because we didn't have a strategy. We bought the CRM and then we looked at it and we're like, what's it going to do? It's going to solve all of our businesses. And then we didn't, like, everyone was just like, is it like a Ron Popeil chicken machine? Do we set it and forget it? We walk away? Like, no one knew. It's not the CRM's fault, right? Same thing's going to happen with CX.
Dessert topping and a floor wax.
Right, exactly. It's amazing.
Sven is quite right. It seems like we didn't learn out of the CRM past, because the intrinsic issue with CRM was there's no intrinsic motivation.
Shall we go back? Go ahead. I was going to wonder, should we go back to what we did last week? We asked our last guest, Michael Wu, what CX was. He gave us a good answer. What's CX to you?
What was his answer? You're not gonna let me cheat off of what his good answer was? That's unfair.
No, we'll let you cheat. His answer was customer experience is the difference between what customers expect and what they receive. And is that sharp or what?
It is, but I would probably say, I don't know if that's customer experience. I would say that's definitely customer experience analytics. that's definitely, that is like that should be the gold plated on every box of analytics tools you ever buy. Listen, I tend to look at
he's a data scientist
experience.
After all.
Well, yeah, and that perfect fit in there. I would say that customer experience is the intentional enterprise-wide team sport strategy of how an organization has taken the wants, needs, expectations of a market, of a customer, of a prospect, whomever, and translated the business into value that customer receives. And that is made up of a billion different parts that can go into it, that are some of them controlled by an organization, some of them completely out of control of an organization, which means that CX can never just be a tool set, right? CX is not, it could be a label that we put on technologies, but it has to be a strategy, because it has to be that strategy where we are listening, constantly improving and delivering in whichever way brings the customer and the business together in a single plane, right? Because a customer experience, and I think all too often we think of customer experience as an organization having to meet the needs of our customers everywhere the customer wants to be. And that's nonsense. That's impossible, because most of the time customers don't know what they don't know. In fact, all of us don't know what we don't know, right? It's about being able to meet those needs in a way that our customers know, understand, and then can give back and transact. And whether that transaction is through the delivery and exchange of data, whether that transaction is hopefully the profitable relationship that guides us through to that next moment in time. But it has to be that common ground of where the customer's demand for value and a business's articulation of value meet, so that the customer is then given that opportunity to transact or to tell us that we're insane and walk away with our fingers held up in the air. Little things like that.
Yeah. I mostly wanted to ask because I needed to hear enterprise-wide team sport again.
Oh, yeah, that's my favorite. Well, here's the thing, Marshall. Since no one's here and no one's going to tattle on me, I totally stole that from Nicole France. And I told her I was going to steal it. She said it to me in a conversation. And I was like, I had started here at Constellation, and Nicole was my partner in crime before she went off and joined the dark side of being, an evangelist and a vendor. And she was like, it's an enterprise-wide team sport. And I'm like, and that's what I'm stealing from you. Thank you so much. Bring it on. So I wish I could claim it.
Well stolen, though.
Let's get a bit into a little competition.
Okay.
I love Sven's comment, especially since we frequently discuss about it. What is your point? So, I in a regular, well, if I want to be a bit strong and create opinions, I say CX is done to an outcome. It needs a couple of initiatives. A business is not there to be a charity, means there need to be an ROI, which is measured in dollar. What's your point?
Listen, it does. It has to be measured. Well, okay. For me, CX is oftentimes, I think the hardest metric is to measure both growth and customer experience in terms of margin and the expansion of margin, right? Because it's both about that growth and that profitability and how you keep that line going nice and upward in that upward direction. But it's also about how you can understand and within your strategy, understand some of the waste, some of the obsolescence, some of the ridiculousness, the silly business that we tend to put into some of these journeys where we're like, of course we need to email someone 19 times before they transact, when in reality, we really only needed to email them twice, right? So it's how do we kind of start to remove that operations and how do we start to remove some of that waste that's in there? So what ends up happening is that as that line goes up and that line goes down, what's in the middle, that margin, that ends up really being kind of what that outcome measurement is like. So yes, I do think for a business, the outcome, that end result has to be that CX delivers something that is quantifiable in dollar signs. What I think people miss in that is that when they hear that, it sounds almost predatory. Like they don't like how they feel when they hear customer experience should be measured in dollars, because it feels almost like a hard transaction. And what they forget is customer experience is made up of so many different things, right? It is having that data, it is having that understanding, having that construct, that digital manifestation of who our customer is that exists within our walls, right? So customer data. And understanding that customer so well that with empathy, with, caring and feeding, with that desire to actually help, all those altruistic things that we feel go into ensuring that we're building a, wait for it now, relationship, right? We have somehow forgotten that it's the relationship and the continuation and the sustainability and the durability of a profitable relationship between brand and buyer that drives profitability.
My dear, this is called loyalty.
I would actually push back on that slightly, Ralph. I would say that loyalty is one aspect of it, but advocacy is another, and those are two very different things.
Fair enough.
And I think that when you have both of them, what you end up with is the other word that people always forget, which is durability. Right? We're talking about durable relationships when a lot of times when we're looking at these passive CX strategies that are more like campaigns, they're not actually a strategy. When we look at the passive nature of how a lot of people construct CX, it's about a transaction and not the durability of the relationship. And a durable relationship will have that loyalty, that feeling that I can't do business with someone else, right? I have to do business with someone. He's got his article.
So,
do it.
Yes. Right into it. You can get this durability for two ways, basically. One way is you want me to make business with you, and the other way is there's no way out. Means you are captive.
The trap.
Right, but that's where advocacy comes in, right? So this is what I'm saying is that loyalty is one thing, and loyalty can be misconstrued, right? Loyalty on paper is that someone keeps doing business with you. But if that person is doing business with you because they feel like they can't leave, right? I would argue that a lot of airline miles customers are not loyal. They're held hostage, right? They're like, I got so many miles.
In general.
And being cuffed is not the loyalty of
that's not
free
loyalty,
will, which we are talking about, and we would like to see.
Loyalty is that feeling like I can't do business with someone else. Like I really want to keep doing business with you. I am so loyal. But loyalty without advocacy advocacy is the part that proves whether loyalty is captive or whether it's voluntary, right? Do you tell people about it? I love doing business with brand. They make it so easy. Like, oh my gosh. And so I think that when you look at those two things together, that's when you start to understand where that connection point between that loyal advocate turns into that durable, profitable relationship. Because again, it's about that durability. If I test this, like, durability isn't a time frame. I think that's the other thing that people start to misconstrue. If you're looking for a durable relationship, you're looking for one that if you set it on fire, it still lasts. The relationship makes it out of the fire. If I lose your bags, you don't hate me afterwards and go on to, the Twitter machine being like, I will never fly with you again, Air France. But, like that. So I do not have a durable relationship with Air France. I have not had a durable relationship with them for many years. But, so I think that what becomes the challenge here is that in our quest to create durable, profitable relationships, we have misunderstood a lot of the key components that go into building that relationship. And to Thomas's point, that's where you end up when you look at the transactional diagram. You're like, well, this person keeps doing business with us because they have no place else to go and you won't let me out. That's not a durable, profitable relationship, because the minute that person has the opportunity to leave, they're going to bounce faster. Right? They're going to bounce and they're going to be screaming. Yeah, they're going to be screaming the entire way. I never want to spend a single penny with you again. I think that's where the difference is.
Yeah. And on the other side of it, I mean, you can have loyalty and advocacy, but no transactions.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in a situation like that.
Right.
Yeah. Social media. For probably 10, 15 years, I've been obsessed with a shoe company, John Fluvog. They make beautiful... I'm not a shoe guy, but they make beautiful, beautiful shoes. Men's shoes, women's shoes, non-gendered shoes, beautifully produced. And the experience in their stores is great. Their online, their social media presence is good, but I can't wear them. They're generally Italian-styled shoes, which do not work on my feet. If my feet ever change, like if I get a leg transplant, I'm going to be all over them shoes because they're amazing. They're beautiful, and the stores are fantastic, and the people who work in the stores are fantastic. Anytime someone asks me about, upscale shoes, John Fluvog. You're a guy, John Fluvog. You're a woman, John Fluvog. You're a Klingon, John Fluvog. Or John Fluvog.
But someone would argue, right, Marshall, that the investment that they have made into you is rather passive, right? But what they've gotten out of your loyalty and your advocacy for their brand, as opposed to continuously buying that product, is that you have driven people and you have pushed people into their opportunity funnel.
Exactly.
Right? So
I just gave them free advertising right now.
Right. So I think that people tend to look at it as like everything has to equal a set dollar value or a set dollar value that equals one Excel spreadsheet line, when the reality and what makes CX so intensely difficult for people is that there are lots of different things that go into it. Like we're still using single point of attribution brain when looking at something that is very complex and involves people, right? Like people are the worst predictive beasts ever. Like the number one thing I can predict about the human brain is it's unpredictable. And I can sit there and look at 90 billion different data sets. And I've had countless conversations with data scientists, and they're like, yeah, I can tell you 100 out of 1,000. Yes, this is what you're going to see. And then all of a sudden one person woke up on the bad side of the bed and threw off the whole model. Right. And it's these kind of funny things that happen with this weird computer known as the human, is that we're constantly having to call the IT department on us. Right. Like there is no, like, can we just restart it? Like there isn't that. So I think that when it comes to CX, we want it to be a single static workflow. We want it to be a single journey. We want it to be a single journey that maybe gets so complex we've put 3 broken trees into it, and that covers it. Now I can turn it into a Ron Popeil chicken machine.
Yeah.
But honest, you just mentioned the word human beings. personnel. So humans are creating costs. And what I am very hard touched by is that I feel back into the 70s, where one of the gossip words when I went for my studies and went to school was, working for a US company is not a smart move because they go by hire and fire consultancy. They don't think, they just lay off people. That's their attitude. Knowing that is a bit more complicated, I would like to have your share of mind. If it is a smart move, if you want to create CX, design CX, that laying off experts and expertise and human beings which create CX and empathy, is it a wise move?
You know what, listen, having been someone who has had to make the layoff decision, as well as being someone who has been laid off, here's what I'll say about any type of business decision that has to do with personnel, whether it comes to hiring or whether it comes to downsizing. The reality is that oftentimes business decisions can go horribly off the rail if we base them solely on how we're feeling or on empathy, right? So I think that to a large degree, I tend to leave those conversations alone. And I mean, we've had a lot of them in technology over the last several, months, right? Of big layoffs. And we all act like it's the first time a technology company has ever laid off more than 10% of its employees. But I remember pink slip parties in the year 2000 when you could go with your pink slip to the San Francisco Giants game and you'd have a full arena of all the people in technology who had just gotten laid off, who got a free ticket and a hot dog, right? So this is not a new pattern, and it's not just US based, right? This is a global business decision mantra. So I've tended to assume, rightly or wrongly, that those decisions are based on an earnest look of where an individual business is, and whether those are foolish and whether those are not. Those are business decisions that are way above my pay grade. And when I have had to be the one who makes those decisions, the only thing that you can do when your business dictates that operational cuts have to happen is handle how you treat people on their way out of your business with the same level of empathy that you would want to receive if you were getting that pink slip, right? So it's a very different conversation. So I think that, but I do think that the overarching conversation where I do think that question does pertain to CX, because I think that equating layoffs and CX, that's a hard conversation to have. I do think, though, that it is an exercise mentally into what is the muscle memory of how you react, right? Is your muscle memory to sit back and say, well, we fired all the people who knew anything about it, we can't possibly do anything? Or is your muscle memory to listen? And if that muscle memory is to listen to your customers, if you've just had a negative customer experience, right? You've just had storms that created massive, flight delays across Southwest Airlines. Yeah. Is your muscle memory to listen to the frustration, to honestly keep your ears open, even though it is exceedingly uncomfortable and you might want to take things personally? Do you listen? Are you hearing that? And then making substantive change to what you would normally consider a workflow to deliver that empathy, to have that messaging that shows that you've heard something. During times of layoff, have you done the same thing to your employees? Because this is what we all talk about, right? That connection point between EX and CX, right? That employee experience conversation and your customer experience conversation. And what we're talking about here is, do you have the capacity to listen? And I think that in times of whether it's a market contraction or whether it's a time of kind of corporate disruption where you are having to lay people off, do you have mechanisms in place that are listening, absorbing, and then making that calculation that within your strategy, if we make a change because of what we're hearing and seeing, we can actually have better outcomes in the long run? And I think back to Thomas's point of how do you measure this? Do you measure this in dollars and cents? I think you're still measuring that in dollars and cents. But if you don't listen, if you don't have that capacity to listen at the front end, You're not going to be able to get to that end where you can measure to a positive outcome, even though you had to make a really negative decision.
So now that we had the conversation about bullshit decisions, sorry for that word.
Both of you have potty mouths. Are you kidding? I'm here for it.
No, I'm actually not in front of this discussion because it doesn't help us and it doesn't help the businesses. So we now know that this is probably not the right way. What is the right way? So now there is a contraction happening.
Yeah.
What I usually say is that CX is the ultimate differentiator that you have right now.
Yeah.
Because product, placement, and price are commodities. And CX is the differentiator till it's a commodity too. So now how with limited efforts, limited outlays, achieve a positive result? And I'd say CX is a consequence, not necessarily a strategy. It's an output.
Right, but you had to have a strategy that got there because listen, no business has succeeded because you just showed up to work, right? Like there's a strategy there, like there's a reason why you do it, and there's a construct around it, and there's intention behind it. I think when CX, when we label CX, if we label something as CX and then it fails, if we really honestly look back at that failure, the reason why it failed is because we put the label on it after the fact. So it failed, and then we're like, oh, that was CX and it failed, right? So it's like, oh gosh.
Ouch.
So I think that really what we're talking about here is in the what can we do, we have to take that step back and fundamentally understand that the market has changed in a way. And when I mean market, I mean buyers, regardless of whether you're buying, like to Ritual's point earlier, whether you're buying orange juice and socks or whether you're buying, $1 million airplane parts, right? The buyer and the mental model through which that buyer and that consideration factor and the speed and the time compression of all the decisions that go into that, that's fundamentally changed, right? And we need to be able to step back with that strategy that understands how it has changed. How has that person changed? How has that decision-making cadre changed? And how do we then take what we know about our products, what we know about our business, what we know about our processes, and begin to shift and move that to better be in front of a customer so that when they run towards us, we can openly catch them, right? It kind of ends up not being much harder than that. I think a lot of times if I'm being honest about CX, and as a practitioner, I have been guilty of doing this as well, right?
You're guilty?
I know. What? Yeah. We take campaigns, we take kind of random acts of marketing and engagement, and we try to put them together and label it customer experience. We label it CX so that we can own it, because ownership in corporate settings is really important, right? And so we want to be able to say, I own that positive outcome because I owned these campaigns that brought better leads, better opportunities, better transactions, better whatever into our ecosystem. When marketing did it, like, so I don't know if you guys remember, it's probably about like 10 years ago, I would say, got it edging up into that 10, 15 year time frame. Marketing loved to run around being like the CMO, I own the customer experience. Marketing owns the customer experience. But then probably about maybe 5-6 years ago, we stopped hearing that. Why? Because marketers got burned. CMOs got burned, right? Because they were like, damn, the thing that I told everybody I owned stopped producing the same results that they did at the very beginning. Those campaigns started to wane, right? And then I told everybody that I owned it, and then it started failing, and then I got fired. So CMOs took the hot potato and were like, see ya. Like, nope, don't own it anymore. I do not own customer experience. Nope, no, thank you. I own growth, right? So CMOs very quickly were like, nope, I'm not playing that game anymore. Sales had arguably done that before. Like, sales is the team that dropped customer experience in the hallway for marketers to be able to find. Here's the problem.
Okay.
About 2 years ago, like the lovely folks down in customer service and contact center were like, there's a potato in the middle of the floor. I think I shall pick it up and run with it. And so now we're hearing that group say, I own customer experience. The contact center is CX. And I'm like, okay, everybody, please drop the hot potato. Everybody in the company, please gather around and touch the potato because we all own it, right? Like everyone, because again, it's an enterprise-wide strategy.
I was waiting for you to come back to that.
Everybody touch the damn potato, right? Now, the CMO may own the growth strategy and the growth orchestration of how that strategy is then taken and turned into, translated into those campaigns, into those engagements, into those experiences that bring people in, that make people aware, that get people excited to buy. Customer service, in their touch of the potato, is taking that definition and translating that into exceptional service, opportunities to not only solve customers' problems, but now increasingly opportunities to transact, right? You could be the janitor. You're touching the potato. If you work for a company, you touch the damn potato, right? So I think that this concept of ownership, because ownership translates into reward and success and personal success within that corporation. So I agree, Thomas, with you that customer experience is a differentiator. I think that what ends up happening is because we, yes, to Sven's point, take that strategy of CX and stick it and shove it and bury it in a silo, and that we're, and we want our silo to be recognized for doing better than all the other silos, right? We then end up actually serving against the cause of customer experience as that enterprise-wide team sport, and we turn it into yet another chapter of the very unfortunate game of corporate don't touch my button.
Yeah, right? Because ownership is here, ownership isn't over there. If you can say, I own this, then someone else can say, this is not my problem.
You can have it.
And you cannot say
it's not only my problem. Right. But the reason why I couldn't execute on my part of the customer experience strategy is because you kept all that data away from me. You did, and so it becomes this game of don't touch my button and finger pointing. And the only group left out of all of this, about all this battle in customer experience and who owns it and who gets it, is the customer. Right? The customer is the one that, as I very ironically left out in the cold. So it's kind of this
my experience.
But it's either that or it's my gut.
Those are the spectators watching you in the stadium, which are the ones which have to judge if the team is performing something which is to their liking. So back to the team sports mentioning you did earlier in the conversation, and the aspect that it's like these large boats where you have 11 people on or 8 people on, and like a soccer team, either you have a goal where you want to go for or a target, and you run together in the same direction, or you will fail.
But I think that people, here's what I'll say. I'll actually expand that analogy just a little bit more.
Please.
I think that we tend to think of it as being like, okay, we're all playing soccer. Ergo, Ralph, you're the forward, so you're going to do this. Thomas, you're you're the left-footed defender coming up the side. Marshall, you're the goalkeeper. We assign people positions, right? We assign people positions, and we're like, what our outcome is a goal, right? It's to win the game. It's the goal. Right. But what we tend to forget is there were also all of the training staff that came in and made sure that all of the athletes were fit. There was the coach that gave all of the plays. There was the ownership group that provided us with all the tools and there's, the guy that works on the pitch. There's the guy that, there's the gal that brings out the water. There are all these other players, but because we're so focused on the star players who are on the field and that we can see, we forget about everything else that happens to actually make a team a team. So when I tend to talk to people about this, I'm like, take out the concept of a single sport and instead look at this like, okay, what happens to I'm not going to use Team USA because we're a mess, Team Germany, right? So Team Germany goes off to the Olympics. Does everyone on Team Germany go and play one single sport? No. right? When you're in, you're in the Olympics, you're going and you are going to, you've got a soccer team, you've got a men's soccer team, you've got a women's soccer team, you've got a volleyball team, you've got, a beach volleyball team. Yeah. You have got lots of different playing experts, coaching experts, team experts, but you have an infrastructure in kind of the national team infrastructure that is meant to deliver kind of similar needed requirements to all of those great functional groups who are all doing different things, but who at the end of the day is just trying to bring the gold home to Germany, right? That's what they're trying to do. So I think that it's about what that infrastructure is, but at the end of the day, is anyone sitting on the plane to the next Olympics being like, we will lose, we will lose? No, everyone knows what the goal is. No matter what sport you're playing, everyone knows that when you're on the Team Germany plane, you're trying to win for your country, right? Like there is that singularity of focus. So I think that there's a lot of things that go into that.
Let's extend this question a little further. I mean, I agree it's everybody's job to achieve this outcome, but it's not self-organizing.
No.
For that, there are far too many agendas. So who's orchestrating it, and who should be orchestrating CX?
Yeah, I honestly am not trying to be obtuse when I give this answer, but the answer is sadly it depends, and I know that's a horrible answer to give, so I apologize up front.
Consultant.
Sorry,
but it's
I'm sorry.
Fair answer.
I'm going to explain why I'm saying that. I'm not just going to say it depends and then leave it there like a hot stinking bomb. So I think that. It goes back to something that Ratul had put in earlier in the chat that you showed of like, there are differences in the what you sell and what that time frame of whether it's transaction or decision making, where you sell it, kind of the complexities that go into it. In some organizations, it could be argued that it's the CEO that owns that orchestration, that owns that vision and owns the orchestration of how the organization needs to be not only inspired to lead what that overarching customer experience vision is going to be, but then sets up that operational structure in a way that customer experience outcome can be delivered consistently, right? So that could be the CEO stepping back and in some organizations being like, wow, our sales compensation strategy does not actually align to getting our customer experience strategy done. We've got to change this, or we've got to mandate how those different points of operation and how everyone works together. So in some organizations, that might be the CEO. Arguably, in really large, complex, multinational organizations, that is not going to work, right? You might have to be looking at some type of functional leader who can kind of rally the troops and bring operations and bring technology and bring data and bring people all together. So I think that at the end of the day, there is a little bit of us having to admit that when it comes to a customer's experience, what the customer is actually experiencing and feeling and making that decisions on, we don't own that in any way, shape, or form. The customer does. And if we can right-size that attitude, say that the customer owns the outcomes of their own experiences and that path and that journey, and what we are doing is trying to orchestrate and build a pathway to that point of profitability in an experience, then who needs to be kind of present at various stages and places in that dynamic and in that journey, and then someone owns that piece of it. But at the end of the day, if the customer is acknowledged to own the experience, we as an organization start to make very different decisions about their data, about their privacy, about how many touch points, about how, what happens. We start to make different decisions in the translation model between the product that we want to sell and the value that the customer wants to buy. Right, we start to intrinsically we start to make different decisions. And so I think that as much as I would love to say a single person or a single department has to own customer experience, I think that the entity, the person that is most credited or blamed for culture tends to be the group that has to own that orchestration, right, to bring all of that together. I would love to boil this down and tell you that the CEO owns it, because that feels like the easiest answer, but oftentimes it's not.
At the end of the day, this is where the buck stops, right?
And that's exactly why I would love to be able to simplify it down to that. Like if I had to come up with a simple answer, I would say the CEO, because that if CX is the differentiating skill, the product is just what you sell, but CX is the differentiator, right? Then the CEO, in theory, should be best placed to orchestrate and manage all that. But when you start to realize that in, let's say, large multinational public companies, the CEO isn't necessarily tasked with doing that. The CEO is actually tasked with making sure that stockholders are getting their value. And while stockholders, yes, can and should be considered as a customer segment or group, they're not the only one. But for a lot of CEOs, especially, they've been tasked by the board. Their job is to make sure that shareholders are getting the value that they expect from that stock price. So again, that's why it comes back to, I hate to say it depends, but it depends.
Make it a difficult
beyond their job. It's their legal responsibility in a lot of cases.
Right.
There is no legal responsibility to serve the customer. I mean, it sounds like bullshit, but it's true.
Right. And I think that there are lots of companies that prove that when you do serve the customer, you do then serve the shareholder, and you do serve but that isn't a single strategy. That isn't a single thing, right? You have to have, with as complex as the world is, there is no easy business answer, right? And I think we forget that. I think that we want there to be a single book that we can pick off the shelf at the airport in the business section. That's like, this did it.
As a woman, you may love plants as I do, such as we talk about a flower bouquet, and we cannot take out several flowers and the bouquet looks as smart and charming as it looked before. So coming to the contradiction point and to the downturn point and the challenge with those people which are committed to drive a positive CX, where are the KPIs to look for? Is there a way to establish something like an early warning radar if your CX is going to wheresoever, downhill, pretty politely? Or is there, what is out of your practitioner's expertise and what you hear from your customers?
I'll tell you, I learned this from two different places, at least in my experience. When I have looked for early warning signals, I have tended to find the most tangible ones if I start to see operational costs rising artificially. I'm starting to see greater costs go into my call center because we've got to have more people on staff. We're seeing a higher influx of negative calls coming in that are taking more time to address. I'm having to invest more in marketing to convince everybody that I don't suck. I'm seeing social chatter go through the roof, but I'm having to put more bodies on that to address those issues. We're starting to see a lot of returns. We're starting to see increase in returns and management of returns, but we're not seeing transactions start to offset those. So I would always tend to, at least in my days, as a CMO, I would start to look for the kind of costs that eat away at efficiency and optimization. And I would include those in a dashboard so that I could start to see, wait a minute, yes, from my customer listening posts, and yes, from all of my corporate wide customer listening posts. So not just things that came in from marketing. I want to hear what's coming in from marketing channels. I want to hear what's coming in from customer service and contact center and call center channels. I want to hear what sales is saying, not what sales is putting in CRM because they have to. I want to hear from sales what's going on, what in their experience and their expertise they're going to bring to that picture. Because if I start to hear a grumble internally from my people, I'm going to see that play out in hard numbers from my customers. And I can start to triage and remedy what are some of those situations. So I tend to look at costs, and I would tend to look at those as kind of the hard costs as an early indicator that, wow, something's really going on that may not have anything to do with my function, but my function as a marketer can actually give product, shipping, customer support, sales, can give them some remedy and give them some ideas as what we can do to change this, to get back onto that singular CX strategy.
So
I think that
from sales and to your customers. Do I understand this correct?
Yeah, I want to hear that, when what I valued most in the trenches was the collaboration of everyone in the trench with me, not of what got splattered or written on the trench wall. And that's why, I do think that that's where when you talk about corporate unlikely animal friendships, I tended to get the most when I was most closely integrated and aligned with. So when I worked in skincare, when I could have an honest conversation with someone in shipping, and then have an honest conversation with someone in support and sales, I could then see that line of oh, damn it. Okay, something's going on here. And me as the marketer, how can I put out something proactively that's hey, guys, we know that we missed the mark on this. Here's what we're going to do to remedy this. And then we could kind of release the shackles from our customers of feeling like they had to do business with us. Yeah. So because we were being honest, because we were being transparent, because we were being proactive, they wanted to do business with us, right? So, coming back to Thomas's point, how do we bring that back so that someone doesn't feel shackled to the transaction, but they want to do the next transaction, even though they had a negative experience? It comes from people internally wanting to see all the bumps and bruises, and then being taking ownership for it, not being blamed. And I was very lucky in that the CEOs I have worked for did not create cultures of blame and recrimination. They actually wanted to hear if something was happening, wanted to hear if something was going wrong, and then wanted to also hear the solutions to those problems. They don't just want to hear you talking about how everyone else did it wrong and I'm awesome, right? So it really comes back to that culture and that culture of openness. And I do think, Thomas, you talk about CX being a differentiator in sales. I also think that if you really adhere to that customer first, customer openness, I don't subscribe to the belief of the customer's always right, because sometimes the customer's horribly wrong. But if you subscribe to the customer's voice should be heard first, right? It's not customer only, it's that customer first mentality. That if you subscribe to that type of culture, CX absolutely will be your differentiator, but it will also be your differentiator for your employees, because you're giving your employees that hard and fast North Star that is tangible, that they can track, that they can see, that they can feel success for. And I think that when you start to provide that, your employees are then willing to give you that feedback of hey, something's going wrong. I had salespeople just showing up in my office being okay, I don't know how to say this, but something happened. And here's where I will prove to you that something that happened was a press release went out with a typo in our 800 number. And they came and they were we don't know what's going on, but people are canceling orders. We don't know what's happening, what's going on. So we started to have these conversations with everybody, figure out what's going on. And it came down to, there was a typo in our press release that we're sending people to a horribly graphic porn line.
Wow.
And it was horrible, but it had been going on for a month and none of us knew, right? And thanks to the internet, this damn press release just kept going out there. But again, if we stayed in our functional silos, if we stayed in our lanes, none of us would have known that. But we also wouldn't have known how to go back to the customer and be oh my God, we are so sorry. This is so embarrassing. And, and there's a lot to be said for that customer forgiveness and that malleability of that. But, I just totally went on a tangent and spewed a whole lot of nonsense there. But
as a CFO, I would have tried to invest in that company. So I have a benefit of this, yes?
Well, I'm a pragmatic. Hopefully this year, buddy. Hopefully this year. Although I don't know if I can go to Germany and not have crazy Germans telling me where I need to go all the time. I'm looking right at you guys. And
those crazy Germans.
Very honest. I have been asked by Costa Rican relatives, which are coming in April to visit us, where to go for and what to look for and what are nice places. So I give them some clues, but I always encourage people, I don't know what you like to see. If you want to go for mountains, if you want to go for the seaside, just give me some hints. If you're going for castles, old fashioned bakeries, or if you are the type who would like and love to drink a lot and eat a lot, I have other different and popular recommendations than if you are going on a vegan trip or vegetarian.
But here's the funny thing, Ralph. You just described a CX strategy.
Yeah, I know.
You just described a CX strategy that not a lot of people, I know I'm an expert. Okay, that's going to be a t-shirt that I fully expect from this show to be included as merch. And it's going to be a cartoon of Ralph's face that says, I know I'm an expert. I expect that by the end of this year. Anyway, but the reality here is
you
that
get the first one.
What we often forget is that CX is a strategy, but CX delivery has to start with a conversation. And the best way to start that conversation is from the company to ask the question, what do you like? What do you want? And then having the willingness to listen, because there are a lot of people who would ask me, well, I don't know what you like. Do you want, what do you like? You want to eat? You want to go see castles? And then I could say, I want to go see castles. And then you know what they would send me? A list of all the places to eat that might be near a castle, but it might not be. But it would have a picture of a castle on the top because I told them that I was interested in the castle. That's where CX falls off, like the wheels fall off the bus, is in the delivery, is because I had the best of intentions. I had the strategies. Right. But if I said to you, right, I want to go see a castle, technically, if you send me to White Castle, you did deliver. But, right, I would say, did you deliver well? That's a whole different argument. But I think that at the end of the day, when people ask me what's the number one thing an organization has to do, especially in a market contraction and a downturn, we have to be willing to have a bi-directional, honest conversation that sometimes involves us asking a question and getting an answer we don't want to hear. Right. But it does come down to that conversation. And that conversation isn't necessarily going to be this like, oh, what do you want? Oh, I want this. I want that. A conversation also has to be us then going and seeing all of those other high fidelity signals, all of those other things where I could tell you that I want to see a castle, but the only thing I'm on your website searching for are places to eat, right? So if I tell you I only want to go see castles and, oh, I don't want to drink, but all I'm searching for are beer gardens with good food, that next opportunity isn't just to send me one or the other. It's to find content. It's to find ways and find engagements that are flexible enough that can say, when you go and see the castles that you just told me you wanted to see, and here are two of them I'd recommend, I also think you should go to this beer garden. And you don't say, because you were searching for beer gardens, like, don't be creepy, don't be weird. But so a lot of it comes down to have the tools that can help you bring in that data, understand what people are doing and saying, listen to verbal and nonverbal communication, right? But then also have the wherewithal to understand that not one size of communication out back to that person fits all. You really have to have those great opportunities to have a conversation through content, a conversation through personalized content that really take it to that next level, that allow you and give you opportunity and license to ask that next question. And that's where the previous definition of CX comes in.
And you see very easily that I'm as much as a practitioner in these simple things where I go for mom and pop shops or Auntie Emma approach. So if I want to have an honest conversation and an honest exchange of opinions so that I can do a good CX creation job, I need to know their wishes and their demands. And this starts with family, because even if it's a married family and coming newly onto, then you take some extra efforts because you would know what your grandmother or your kids would expect. Yeah.
But and I mean, imagine in that conversation, if you had that conversation and if you asked those questions and you understood it in your home and then you didn't tell your wife. Right. Imagine you had the conversation and your family was like, oh, here's what I want to do. Here's what I want to eat. I want to do all these things. I really love this. I don't love that. Oh, you sent me this. Here's my reaction to it. And then you didn't tell your wife any of it. That's exactly what we do today when we hoard information in one of those silos that Marshall was talking about, right? Like we take all that information that we got in customer service and we're like, no, it's mine. I got all this great customer data. And then we didn't tell our spouse over in marketing or sales that any of it happened. And then in the quarterly review, because that's when you review CX is once a quarter, because that's only when it happens. You get your PowerPoint deck out and are like, well, marketing and sales didn't follow through. If you wouldn't dream of not telling your wife the information, please stop dreaming of not telling sales and marketing. Like, please, for the love of God.
Exactly.
In the conscious of time,
Yes.
I have three final questions for three famous words. So you are getting the VIP treatment
Lightning
here.
round.
First one, what would you say to this statement?
What statement?
The one that is there in the screen.
Listen to understand, not to act.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say that. I think that you listen to understand, and you have to understand before you act. It's a whole continuum. I was like, are we talking about the statement that Marshall's hungry? Was that the statement? You got me all confused.
No, that was not the statement. Then actually,
Marshall is hungry, though.
Ralph gets a question to answer.
Oh, what is a CX brain?
Surprise, surprise.
Oh God, CX brain would terrify.
Very easy, Sven.
Terrify me. A CX brain would terrify me. It's terrifying. Gosh, is this a trick question where there's already an answer and I'm going to get it wrong?
No, that is a question to. Oh, well, you may answer it first, and then let's Ralph give the real answer.
I know. I feel like this is some kind of like weird German knock joke that I'm getting set up for. Like I feel like I'm getting set up for something here. But I would say that a CX brain is the system that can ingest, categorize, and then create decisioning tools to then drive action for a CX system. So it's not just one thing, because it's not a CDP. So don't anyone come at me with that, or I will fight you. I will fight someone if they say a CX brain is a CDP. But it has to kind of be able to do all of those things and then be able to act. It's like the same thing. Think of it about a human brain, right? Yeah. Being able to take in all those complex outputs and weed out the nonsense. Okay, what's the big knock answer? Is it like
now little hint? Look into Ralph's tagline, and then Ralph to answer too.
It's very simple. It's not the technology approach, dear Sven and audience. It is the human being with his heart and soul. Sometimes thinks in the right direction and listens with the large ears very carefully what the customer or the audience or the family members would like to see. Listen to
the
it,
mindset.
And try to achieve. It is the combination between mind. The mind is here mostly. Heart, gut feeling, managing expectations, getting the logistics right. Yeah. It's exactly the family example, the allegory we utilized for the family vacation or whatsoever that somebody is visiting us. I walk my talk, and this is why I have this in my tagline, because since I have finished my studies and I started my first job, I did a hard learning, and I did it the hard way. I did not listen to my customer, and I was like the hamster in the wheel, and I was on the uncomfortable side. I was thrown through the wheel a lot of times, and that hurted. So
that explains a lot, Ralph.
I do listen more carefully, and also to my wife, and bet you can bet on it. The reflection on my advices and my questions I gave to the family members was, you have, and now Thomas will laugh a lot, you have some typos in there. They probably did not understand what you are questioning or what you are answering, because I did it very fast on my mobile phone, which is not good.
You did it in Jinglish and German English, because that's just not a way.
Dictating even was worse. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no.
I want to answer. I wanted to be responsive. Yeah. Sorry, Thomas.
Now,
many of us think
final one after we got the ultimative answer on what a CX brain is, which is a good thing. Liz,
Yes.
2023. The one thing that you want to get out of this year. What is it?
A good night's sleep. Oh, that's not that.
No.
Okay.
No,
Sorry, no.
that's fair.
Quoted. You will be quoted. A good night's sleep.
Dang it. Well, I got into trouble at our CCE event with Constellation because someone facetiously asked me what's my biggest prediction for 2023, and I, with irony oozing out of my body, said, I really think that this is going to be the year that CX takes off. And someone actually put that in a tweet, and then someone thought I was serious. And I was like, whoa, I'm joking. Like, everybody back up, like, calm down. What do I want to get out of 2023? I would really like to what I hope we start to see, especially in the world of technology, is a clear understanding that simple and simplistic are two different things, and that what people want is simple. We don't want simplistic, we want simple. We want simple tools, simple processes, simple projects. Mm-hmm. We want simple ways to get our jobs done. We want simple ways to buy the things that we want to buy. We don't want simplistic, right? We don't want something that makes us all feel stupid, right? But we want simple. So I think that in, having seen a couple years now of kind of the over complexity of like intentionally architecting over complexity into actions, whether it is how to buy something, how to leave, right? How to cancel a subscription, how to add something into a subscription. We've made things so complex. We've made our lives so complex, bazillion channels, and I've got to manage them all, that I'm hoping, I would love in 2023 for us to focus on simple and understand that simple and simplistic are not the same thing.
And may I add, smart, because then it's nearly perfect. That is what it's in the CX brain. Happy wife, happy life, as Marshall reminded me. And the aspect that simplicity is not even that you lose the smartness in what you are creating and doing. Yeah.
It's just, you just get to it. I think that, like, I remember things that my dad would tell me, right? Of like, just get to it. Just do it. Like, I think that we spend so much time worrying about what's going to happen if we ask the question. How are we going to capture the answer? How are we going to analyze it? Where's it going to go? Where does it live? Who owns it? Blah, 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 blah. We forget, and we didn't ask the question.
Yeah,
we overcomplicated everything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I just want simple. And no dumpster fires.
Yeah. What we want to get out of 2023, I would like to get out of 2023.
I just want it to be boring. Is that too much to ask for? I want to look back and be like, that was a boring yet blissful year.
I'm there.
Okay. That makes for perfect famous words.
But when do we get
it's a Chinese curse. May you live in exciting times, right? That's a curse.
Right, but here's the thing. It's like, if you think about everything that we've just been through from 2020 to 2023, like to this moment in time, wouldn't simple and like just blissfully boring be like the greatest thing that you could wish for? Like, if you looked back and you were like, I got exactly what I expected to get for what I put into it. And that could mean I'm putting everything into it. It could mean I'm just sitting here on a beach, right? Like, whatever you put into it, that's exactly. I didn't get any curveballs thrown at me. No one threw a new variant that decided to kill everybody. Like, I just want
unclench.
Yes.
Go sailing. Go sailing.
We discussed the stress of sailing, Thomas. No.
There's no stress. Sailing is zen.
Right.
Okay.
I love it.
Liz, great. As always.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me on. I always have such a blast coming and talking to you guys.
One of the reasons
we
always have you back.
And Ratul for their comments.
Yeah.
Always great chatting with you. And it's good to have different opinions.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And do yourself a fun fact and go for our cheat sheet and see what we had all in this. We could easily do 3 more conversations, Liz. Easily.
Cheat sheet, schmeat sheet. We had it.
With
We
these-
tried. We really tried to be structured. I mean, I know. I get it.
What?
No.
Ralph asked the layoff question, and then it all happens. So I'm not blaming this whole thing on Ralph.
Structure is for amateurs.
I live with it, but it is the simple idea is, when would you have a slot in your managed calendar when you would like to join us again?
Oh gosh.
No,
Maybe I
don't
should
have
just
to
give you
commit
guys a
on
Calendly
camera.
link. Yeah.
You can get
Let's-
back to us on that.
Sounds good.
That
Sounds good.
is
But no, I would love
an
to come
offline
back.
discussion.
You guys always know that.
You know it.
We do. And
All right.
well, thanks to the audience. Let's go backstage. See you soon. Love Sven's comment, by the way.